On air, online, and on your smartphone too, when you are FM 103.7. Well, the big news story in town from overnight, of course, is the federal budget handed down by Treasurer Josh Frydenberg, and one bloke that loves budgets more than anybody I know. Well, we couldn't get him, so we found Ian Crouch from the Hunter newsroom. Mate, you're not a big fan of budget time, I know.
No, not necessarily, because to put it simply, it just hijacks the news day.
Yeah. Well, it's still very important, though. I mean,
of course it is.
We know if we're getting some money or not enough, and what sort of budget it is. And of course, this time around, the top headline was what measures may have been added for cost of living pressures, and let's see how that delivered.
Well, of course, that's the one thing which is going to help us all, basically, whether you own a car or not, because it all comes back to not just owning a car, but buying your goods and the transport to get it to where it's gone, that sort of thing. Of course, is the 50% cut to fuel excise over the next 6 months. That starts immediately, and that should bring down the cost of petrol by 22 cents a litre.
Yeah, I can tell you it didn't start at 7 o'clock this morning when I filled up.
Not yet, no,
but it gradually
it will happen in the next week or so, certainly. That's probably the biggest thing out of that. Also, there's a $420 one-off tax offset for low-income and middle-income earners. Individuals already getting the existing tax offset will get up to $1,500, and two-income families getting the offset at the moment will get $3,000 for 1 year. So they're a couple of the major things. There's a $250 one-off payment for pensioners and that sort of thing, people who are on income support, that sort of thing. Sounds nice, but doesn't go very far, let's be honest, but that's how it goes.
Yeah, and unless that's changed since last night, there was no exact time frame given on when that would, but you would probably think a couple of weeks before the election would be when that would happen. So
exactly.
Announce the election, then announce the date of those payments, you would think.
Exactly. But of course, we're talking about infrastructure for the Hunter and some of the major spending. We've already heard this week $1 billion to duplicate a section of track between Tuggerah Lakes and Wyong, allowing express services to overtake slower passenger and freight trains. How much that will speed up this express service to Sydney, well, it'll be something, but it's nobody's measured it yet, so we'll just see what happens there.
I always think with that is a massive amount of money for just a couple of K's worth of track. I mean, I've never built a railway, I don't know what they cost, but $1 billion to do that, if that is the cost, then you have to really look at all those future and past announcements of very fast rail. Not going to happen.
Well, yeah, and they're saying that's there's a $1 billion commitment from the state government on top of that as well, so it's $2 billion effectively. I took a call from someone this week saying, well, actually, there was a whole lot of infrastructure in there years ago for this, and it all got ripped out. So they're going to put it all back in again. So,
of course it did.
Okay, yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense, doesn't it? Moving right along, $8 million for the New England Highway duplication between Singleton and Muswellbrook. But again, don't hold your breath about that. That won't be done for probably 5 years.
Yeah, that's all some of the planning phase of that.
Planning, that sort of thing.
That seemed to come out of the blue, but I think that's a fantastic.
Oh, sure,
fantastic.
It's a good
well
thing.
Needed there.
Yeah, but it'll be a while before it happens. $12 million, of course, for the safety improvements on John Renshaw Drive between Beresfield and Black Hill, and $7 million towards a business plan for an interchange on the Pacific Highway at Atalia Road at Ballakira, with the state government also chipping in $2 million there. So it's a $9 billion. Scratch your chin and let's how we do it situation.
That'll cover some of the studies and the
yes.
feasibility, environmental, all that stuff, all the green and red tape. What about some of the reaction though? I mean, you can tell that yes, it's a budget before an election, which is always the vote buying stage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The one after an election, that's sort of the go hard one. But this has always got to be the sweetener. Have the reactions been warm, otherwise, or mixed?
Oh, mixed. Certainly mixed. Hunter Business Chambers welcoming the targeted tax relief for businesses, and of course the halving of the fuel excise. That'll help in terms of transport of goods, and the end cost of goods hopefully should be cheaper. Also the $6.5 billion nationally to support apprentices and trainees into a job, including a 120% deduction for money spent on training employees. So if your employer spends $100 on training for you, they'll actually get 120 back, which is not bad going.
No, so all of us, there'll be a lot of training companies all of a sudden spurred up to
There's nothing wrong with that either.
No, not suggesting there is. Just suggesting that if you're about to set up a training company, you might be a time to target.
Yeah, and So there's a little bit of positive there in terms of that. On the other side of things, politically, of course, Labor's saying, well, let's be honest, we're coming up to an election and there's a whole lot of cash splashing to make us look more electable. So, but some of the things that, for instance, Paterson MP Meryl Swanson has been saying to me this morning, some of the infrastructure commitments they were hoping for, nothing in the budget for things like an MRI licence for the new Maitland Hospital, no money there for improving the Newcastle Airport terminal. Of course, the runway is going in, that's great, but you're saying, well, where's the terminal that we need to make sure that we've got the capacity to take these international passengers?
Well, but hang on, the airport's only a few years ago just gone through that big expansion, so either do it right the first time or, again, it's the same thing, we'll come back and do more and more and more.
And another thing that the local Labor MPs are pretty concerned about was there is no money to kickstart or restart the GP Access After Hours program, which is languishing very sadly. So it's an interesting situation, but it's what you would expect coming into an election year. Of course, people like the federal member for Lyne, David Gillespie, said to me this morning, well, the Hunt is a big winner out of all this, not just the infrastructure, but all this work we're doing to reduce the big debt that we had to go into to get through COVID. We're sorting that all out. We've done the hard work and all that sort of stuff.
I don't know. There did seem to be a hell of a lot in really addressing the big debt, but you can't spend and save at the same time. So maybe a few booby traps left for Labor if they end up winning the next election too.
It'll be interesting to see what they do, because if they take some of this on. Interestingly, the Labor MPs, particularly Pat Conroy and the Newcastle MP Sharon Clayton, they're pretty fairly warm about the hydrogen hub concept for the Port of Newcastle. They think that's got a lot going for it, which is good. So there's again $100 million there announced overnight towards encouraging investment and some early work to make that happen. So, but again, that's a fair way off. A lot of these announcements, as Meryl Swanson was saying to me this morning, are a bit of a way off yet. Some of them are not even in this current budget cycle. So, it's a nice thing, but let's see what happens in the end.
Very much is what it is. We'll see if it's a vote winner, but at least most people getting a couple of bucks in their pocket. Ian, I know you got a big dance card on today. You're off to our restaurant of the month for today at Maitland, or at East Maitland. So
yes,
a lot of listeners will look forward to seeing you in your nice blue shirt.
Indeed.
There he is with a budget wrap for 2022. He loves it. From the Hunter Newsroom, Ian Crouch there with us at 2NURFM 103.7.
A broadcast service of the University of Newcastle.